Hi there. So today on the Synergy Exchange, we've got Mitch Wells from Fintech Rec. Not only one of our partners, we've become a friend once you've been working with someone for long enough. Mitch is our exclusive partner for any in-house in-industry hiring that we do. So, thought it'd be great to get Mitch in to talk about the industry in regards to hiring, who's doing it, and what the market's looking like these days in an ever-changing landscape. So, welcome to the show, Mitch.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, good to be here.
So, in your vast experience, because you've been both sides of the coin, if you want to call it, with foreign exchange, you've been a senior level dealer, you've done training and the recruitment side of things, and then fired off into your own specialist business in hiring, and one of the main leaders in that sector now.
Thank you. Yeah.
So in your view, what does the FX and payments hiring market look like these days?
So it's adapted a lot since we started Fintech Rec. There's been a lot of change, particularly this year. I think we're seeing a real sort of pullback from graduate, junior hiring. A lot more businesses relying on guys that can hit the ground running. A few theories behind that. I think coming out of the pandemic, we saw a bit of a romantic time where everyone was ready to get back into office, and with that, a few years down the line came kind of complacencies, wanting to work from home. It's some intricate kind of challenges that we're seeing in the market at the moment, but it's a lot of the volatility that's going on, and I think the repetitive work just isn't for everyone in reality.
The working from home thing.
Yeah.
So you've been in this industry many years, like me. When you started and I started, if it even mentioned, like, can I work from home?
Yeah. I mean, you're moving on in your mind, aren't you? Let's be fair. You know what it takes. You've got to be around the team. You've got to be in the training. You've got to be listening to the objections. You've got to be able to, deal with all of the objection handling training and everything that kind of comes with the job. So you can't do that from at home. You can't do that from sitting on a computer. And, I look at myself when I work from home and I think, am I as productive as when I'm in the office? And the reality is no. And I can't say that I know anyone that would say the opposite.
No, for sure. I think for us, we do have some operational staff that work from home, like finance admin. We've got our internal compliance reviews, clients before we submit or whatever. But sales, definitely. You cannot have a vibrant sales office, especially with new people coming in.
Yeah.
When you're people that know what they're doing and you're experienced people work from home.
Well, look, I was about to say exactly that. I think when you're starting your career, your first 5 years, like absolutely, you've got to be in office because you've got to get the training. You've got to bounce off the team. You've got to build your own sort of stature within the organisation so that you can kind of progress your career. If they can't see you working, they don't know you're working at the end of the day. But I do think there comes a time where you would hit 10 years. You've got a client base. You've got a network. And perhaps then you can discuss potential flexibility of, when you do have kids, you've got to do the school runs. Like there is an element where we do need to adapt as an industry, but at the same time, candidates need to understand they have to earn it, and I think too many people are coming in on day one going, here's what I want.
I agree. So if, for example, you're an established senior dealer at an FX firm and you're running a really heavy book, you've been there forever, you're not necessarily doing the training, you're that person that just sits there, head down in their book. I think then there should be some flexibility there.
100%, yeah. When you're of value, then there's got to be reason that the business is going to retain you at the end of the day, but you're giving that reason for them to retain you. You're not coming to ask for it.
Yeah. And do you find some of your candidates are asking?
Everyone. Unfortunately,
how many mental health days do I get?
Everyone in sales now wants dealing, account management. Yeah. And again, that's just not a job you walk into. Typically you earn these opportunities. Businesses are using them to retain staff, to improve, the longevity of an individual within the organisation and progression within the organisation. So, naturally, they're just not coming to market for these guys when they are coming on and they want to go into the exact role they've just left.
If you're an established dealer in a business, you've been there for a few years, you're proven, you're not so much on the training side of things. You've got a book of clients that you're billing, and the business you just make sure we're getting, servicing those clients to the best. I think someone like that, when they're in that position, a little bit of a hybrid is fine.
When they're 5 years in the role, they've got their book, they're managing it, know what they're doing day to day. It's not just about building. It's about retaining. It's about upselling. It's about, building those relationships with your clients. You actually want those guys out your office more in reality. You want them meeting your customers, doing the networking events. So in reality, if they're in the office, they're not making you money when they're in that position. So I do think it does warrant, at some point in the career, a conversation that flexibility can be offered, but that's not down to the candidates, I think, is ultimately what it comes down to. It's down to the employers and down to the value you've built within that employer.
So you're dealing with payments companies. I mean, I say payments companies these days. I mean, FX companies. Like Synergy aren't an FX company solely anymore. So it's I sometimes find it difficult to compare us against someone else. But you work with FX trading houses, payments houses. You're working from the big boys all the way to the smaller setups, the more boutiques. Who's hiring and who's pulling back right now?
So look, obviously there's a lot of changes with a lot of the big firms. There's been a lot of acquisitions this side of 2025. I won't mention any brands specifically, but I think the majority of the industry knows who's acquired who. That's created a shift around. I think it's created the stability with a lot of seniors in the market, commissions changing, roles changing, crossovers with other guys coming in from other organisations. So I think that's played quite an impact in today's market.
I've seen what I've seen is on some of these other firms when acquisitions gone on, some of the basic salaries and commission structures just seem a little bit out there these days. Yeah. Like I'm hearing basic salaries like that. Well, how is that commercially going to work with the commission structures that they're telling me that they're on? Is it some of it pie in the sky, or is it?
I think it's everyone working to their means in reality. Some have overspent on product, service and tools, and that's reflected in their salaries and commission packages. Right. Others have prioritised their people and put their eggs into their individuals and offer better commission structures. I also think it's got a lot to do with the marketing and brand behind the individual. You can't go and do the same job with two different brands. One brand might prop you up with a lot of marketing, some budget, allow you to go out to do the events, give you budgets to do the trade fairs and everything that come with that. Whereas others are, here's a computer, here's a phone, get on with it. You would expect higher commission with the lesser tools because you're having to put in more to get.
They're having to go and get more sources.
Yeah. So if you hear 10% commission at one brand and 10% commission at the other, or 20% or whatever percentage we're coming up with, none is the same because one brand will prop you up more than the other. One will have a role that allows you to deal with warm leads, a win back book and other things to it. So it's not necessarily going to pay you the higher comp.
I think that's important because, it's not just about that headline commission figure because, it depends what the business, like you say, what they're putting in, what is their cost of sales. So if they have a marketing team, they're doing content, you're bringing in warm leads, then obviously there's a cost to that. So you can't expect the high level comms when the company's spending X amount of pounds of the year helping you.
I mean, I always thought a more prominent question for a candidate to ask on this front is, really where they're being positioned at, in the sense of their role. Are they going in to do just that cold call, getting on the phones, onboarding and do the full 360 of everything? Or is there support? Is there additional, individuals, BDMs, leads, anything that's going to the desk that they can then sort of build upon? Because it makes an impact to what you earn,
Yeah. Our content and podcast and thing goes out to quite a lot of people, and we get a lot of young graduates come to us and say, how do we get into the market, etc. In your view now, so if someone joins a newbie into an FX firm now, what do their first 3 months look like typically across the market?
The truth is a bit of hell. They've got to do a full-time job on the phones, telephone work, new business sales, but they're also doing training, and that's not going to come in the core sales times. You are going to be doing that in the mornings, in the evenings. You're going to have to get in, before 8 o'clock to make sure you've done your training, you've had your morning meeting, you've gone through the economic calendar, you know what your plan is for the day. At the end of the day, you're going to have a bunch of call recordings, a bunch of calls that you did or didn't do well in, that you're likely going to sit down with your team leader and you're going to review those. You're going to look at objections, you're going to look at how you handled rejection, what you could have done differently. All of this is on top of a full-time position. This isn't on the side or during those times. So most young guys come in and fail. We used to look at sort of 50-50.
So we've had this discussion before about training in international payment companies. Some do, some don't. Some have this whole whip technology, 250 calls, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Is that got better? What's the general across the board? Is there training? Look, in your opinion?
First of all, I think sales has changed from when I started. The whole 250 dials is less effective now. I think that you need other routes to market, other support. I think you guys are representing that really well with like video marketing and doing a lot of social media stuff.
Yeah.
That doesn't do the sales itself, but that supports your brand recognition. That supports your message, and that supports your customer views. You know,
Yes.
they're able to see your brand every day. No different than what you see on commercials on television, but social media now is what people are watching. They're not going home and watching BBC and EastEnders. They're going home and scanning through Instagram and looking at YouTube.
Exactly.
I see my kids doing it themselves, and they have no interest in Netflix or Amazon or hobbies or anything. They want to get home and chat to their mates and get online, and that's the new generation coming through today. So, it's about working with the changes, and I think there's a lot of firms out there that are still just bashing phones. They're not necessarily seeing the future of where sales is going.
Yeah.
And that is impacting on the training. I think that is why there is some retention issues with certain firms. I think that is why, people are finding the career a little bit mundane than it was before. Because back in the day, we were like really heavily like revenue generated. It's all about profit and getting rich. And I feel like that mind frame's very much gone in the marketplace, as it should be. But it hasn't yet been replaced with all the firms with, the new modern ways to market that will prop you up and support your sales efforts.
Yeah.
If you can get better retention and better referrals and more numbers coming through from the activity you are doing, and that's with using the new tools.
It's one of those things though, like doing it how we do it now. You can't try it. You've literally just got to go fully in and can keep doing it.
Yeah, consistency.
It's
all
about
about
consistency, and it's a huge investment. Whereas I think people are still and each to their own. I don't want everyone to do it the way we do it. But to be honest, I don't think everyone can.
No, look, I think you have to be in the right mind frame. You have to have the right team around you. It's not something you can necessarily just do with your existing team because they've been doing what they do for so many years, and it's uncomfortable for many people.
Yeah.
Even today, coming to the podcast, I'll find myself uncomfortable on the way in because I'm a bit old school. I know I'm a bit of a dinosaur now, And,
but you're the one who started doing these podcasts.
Yeah. I started it and then I dropped them. No, I didn't drop them. I did it a very expensive way. I was renting out studios. I had full videographers coming in. Like, I don't think we had the smartphones and the stuff that we've got now to do the editing tools. Like nowadays, you can pump it into an AI, and out comes an amazing video. Whereas back then it was like, what am I doing? I don't even know how to edit. Like,
I think it's going back to the supporting people as well. It does go hand in hand with training. Yeah. It's I'm from that very old school. Well, it sounds old school now, but it was the new school of deliverable foreign exchange when I started. I used to, when I was a sales manager, I could get someone in and say, right, here's a script.
Yeah.
If you make 200 calls a day, these are your rebuttals.
Yeah.
You are going to get clients on and you are going to succeed in this and keep client retention because you're always giving a good price, always doing a good job. It doesn't work like that anymore.
No.
I don't think it does.
Well, you also have to have more than just FX now, don't you? I think in the reality, you can still maintain competitiveness with FX and only FX, but I don't think you can maintain profit with only FX nowadays. I think that there is a more present challenge in the market in risk and volatility, and I think that there have been some businesses managing profit over risk, perhaps, and that's now create a shortfall for a lot of the industry, and that's the new challenge that we're sort of looking to overcome with the likes of Argentex and other firms like that have gone under of late. It's not good for the industry because it means the banks are going to turn it up. They want more from compliance. They want more money up front for direct lines and credit facilities, and overall this is spiraling somewhat, So
talking about some firms that have gone under, I follow the particular person. We're connected. I don't follow them. We were connected on LinkedIn, and their firm went under. A lot of people lost money.
Yeah.
But I see them in Dubai now promoting their best life, promoting this, I'm doing this, I'm doing that now. This is my new toy, and I thought to myself, hang on, I find that quite distasteful.
Yeah.
How many people that clients you had that trusted you mismanaged your business?
Okay? I mean, look, I could go back through the industry and there's several people that have been and done it several times over, unfortunately. I think that's why it's important to research the firm you join, obviously, and who you work with for your finances as well, because there are some companies out there that are not managing things as they should be managed.
No, for sure. You mentioned there about products. That Synergy have been working in commercial finance products with FX for quite some time. We're going back a few years now when we started working with you, and you were like,
I was amazed that you had it, to be fair. I think at the time it was maybe eBri was your main competition. I don't think there was many other payment firms with lending.
Yeah, I mean, eBri, when I say their competition, I wouldn't mind being a fiver behind them, but in the yearly revenue. But, they have a great product. It sits very differently to ours.
Yeah.
They have one product that fits in with their FX where, we're more catered to the SME market. So you can't just have one. One size doesn't fit all in there. So you need to be able to, have a plethora of product.
Yeah.
And to be able to structure that right. So we've gone from offering commercial finance to real structured loans now.
Yeah.
Is what we do. But, I've found, look, I'm one of these people. I don't really care what other people are doing. I focus on what we do and I wish everyone the best, right? But everyone seems to have trade finance on their websites now.
I feel like they've seen it as an opportunity. FX is a real good tool to still do sales, right? And I think that, trade finance and financial products is a great way to market. So they complement each other. And I think other firms have maybe seen companies like yourself with some success and sort of looked at the numbers in the headcount and thought, we need to do this as well. I think that's ultimately what it boils down to. If you do something good, they will replicate. If you look back 10 years ago, everyone was trying to copy Alpha FX. Let's be honest. Again, I probably shouldn't mention the brand, but that's the truth.
I know them well.
I could have mentioned 20 different names that are all looking at Alpha and going, "That's what we want to build." Some of them did it, some of them didn't.
On Alpha, I know Morgan.
Yeah,
they're genius.
Yeah,
absolute genius.
Number one for a reason, right?
Yeah.
I can't deny it. They do work for it though. Those guys are the hardest working guys in the industry.
Actually, I've actually had lunch with Morgan and a few conversations in the past. And before they moved to their other offices, they actually took me for a tour and I met a load of people there.
Yeah, lovely offices.
I just so ahead of the times. I thought at the time with them, and I'm not. Listen, I'm not here trying to promote any other business of my own. But at the end of the day, I love success in this market.
You can see why everyone replicated and wanted to follow their kind of corporate builds that they had going on. But I think they turned into so much more, and obviously have now been acquired.
Same with eBri though.
Yeah,
and I'm sure if we're mentioning brand names, and I'm sure they're not going to mind when we're being positive.
We're not being negative, are we?
Exactly. So, my first relationship with eBri was when they had about 12 people.
Yeah,
and I actually sat down with the owner at the time and another guy. I won't talk about names, but and to see their growth and how they did a lot of VC money coming in, everything like that. And what they did with the white label market.
Yeah,
they weren't the first in at it. There was a company that was there that started it off really, but they came in and definitely swept up after that particular company.
Yeah,
and really took it on.
Well, look, I mean, they're backed by Santander. Like how many other FX payment firms have a whole building society behind them? I suppose they're not bank, are they? But
but you end up being a bank. I think you lose flexibility and you lose service.
Well, I think that tends to be what it is. The compliance tends to be much higher when you've got a bank behind you. Brokers are meant to be there to do what the banks can't, to operate in the higher risk regions, to deliver currencies faster, because you as an SME become the broker's priority, whereas you might not be at a bank. That would be, something that could be mentioned when selecting a provider that, are they actually going to give you the most competitive product and service, or are you buying into the brand? For
sure. I mean, in FX, though, I would definitely say that I wouldn't say the specialities and the skill sets are actually in the banks. I would say on that bigger level, the likes of eBri and Alpha, the experts in that market aren't in the banks now. They are in alternative options like FX. It definitely is in the lending market.
You saw guys from HSBC and Barclays and all these corporate desks sort of make the shift away from banking into broking. That's been happening for years now. There is a lot of perks in working with a more niche, deliverable payments firm than working with your traditional banks, and speed and delivery tends to be top of the list for most treasury managers. So
I think, with the development of the white label FX market, I think in some ways, some people could say it's saturated the market, but what it does do, it does give clients more options.
Well, it drives the price down as well, like if you look at, average prices, back when I started in 2008, there were people taking 2-3% margins, on £20 million transactions. nowadays they're taking 0.2% margins on similar size transactions. So, what it does do, much like when the market was deregulated back in 1998 or whenever it was, it was 1998. It was created to not have a monopolization of banks, right?
Yeah.
And so the price and fairness of, product and competition would be across industry rather than with a few banks.
Yeah.
So I do feel like the white label has come into that, but it's also what's forced other businesses to explore new products like, lending and, trade finance and, even cryptos. I think insurance is a big one now with a lot of firms, pensions. It's kind of products that cross over to your client base effectively. I think that's where we're seeing growth this year particularly. Say what you will, if that's maybe that the profit's been taken out of it. But I actually think that it has been on the G10 side. I think that you do need to get some focus on emerging markets, and you do need to get some focus
solutions based.
Yeah, you're offering solutions to actual headaches and problems, whereas I don't feel that you are on the G10 anymore because they have 100 options, and they can really get any price from any company, big or small. That's the reality of today.
You've got the big disruptors like Revolut, Wise, that come in, and it's like, but for us,
it's taking all the small transactions out, free transactions under 50k.
The retail market, people buying and selling homes overseas. But it all depends as well, though. What do you really want from that? So, you do have these really big platforms, but do you really get the service? When someone's buying a property, it's a lot of times their biggest purchase they're ever going to make.
Yeah.
So you can have, a Revolut or Wise, okay, but are you going to get that same level of hand-holding and help and assistance?
You're in and out. That's the process, right? That's why they're doing it cheap, because they've got massive bills and massive overheads behind them. They need to process you through the door. They don't want to take time with you. They need to get that dealt with.
Exactly.
They've got bigger fish to fry with the large institutional stuff and the large corp stuff
that they're dealing with. That's when you come, maybe a boutique FX company is going to be able to give them that, be on the end of the phone. Yeah. They want to be on WhatsApp, these people. Do you know what I mean? And we can offer that. And so these smaller firms. So the white label market has been great for us. I mean, we launched off of that years and years ago, and have grown on since there. Never, competition is a good thing. People are always going.
I'd agree. I mean, there's a slightly darker side of it where there's, not like yourself where you worked in industry for years before you've set up, learning a trade. I think there are a few firms that have been set up by individuals that maybe just had some money in the bank and fancied setting up a payments firm because they saw some other guys doing it. I do think that there should be a little bit more scrutiny from those that are providing white label, products to these guys, because there are some firms out there with some pretty poor sales practices that probably should be taken a look at in how they're doing business, because it builds bad branding for the rest of us in industry. When there are individuals out there doing the work, getting the lines, taking on the risk, it makes the rest of us look bad when we've got individuals out there setting up businesses because they want to make a quick buck. That's what it feels like.
Smash and grabs. We see it. I mean, we've had people before that we might have parted ways with them, but they might have only ever worked on sales and never even booked a deal. And the next minute, they've got a website up and they're a specialist. They're a CEO of an FX payments firm, and they've got lines with this person, that person. They're like, you've never booked a foreign exchange deal in your life. Yeah. What you've done is you can get clients on, but you've never booked a deal. They
can lead source. They can get leads in. Yeah. They don't necessarily understand the industry or even point of service and what that service actually fills a hole for. And I think like what we mentioned, it's the future of FX is all about delivering solutions now. Being consultative, like understanding your customer's pain points and then offering that solution. Whereas these guys are clever pitching it, smash and grab. Get the deals on. Say some manipulative stuff. Press the button, book the trade, and that's kind of how it's. I mean, that's going back to like 1980s, Jordan Belfort style, like.
Yeah, I mean, we actually banned that
straight line.
But there is. My only issue is at the end of the day, you have to, there is a skill set to this. Yeah. We're not giving advice, but you've got to have conversations. You've got to know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that takes time and experience.
Yeah.
And there is a huge influx of bedroom brokers. They might have been a cold caller somewhere. I mean, you've probably seen it loads of times with people that you've placed even. And the next minute they've gone and got a line somewhere. Generally not with some of the more established white label providers, but with some other ones. And then I don't agree with that. I think there needs to be a minimum criteria. If you say you've worked at a place before, how long? I want to see some pay slips.
I'd like them to see like what the banks do almost, but scale it down somewhat because you're not talking same levels and things. But people go through a proper check, rather than, I believe that most of these firms have sales teams that are pushing the products to individuals in the market. Have you ever thought about, leaving your job and doing this, and it's, fair enough, it actually offers great career avenues, but I don't think it's for everyone, and I think that's the point. It needs to have some kind of compliance like the rest of us have.
It does. It does before something bad happens.
Yeah.
Something big that affects everybody.
Yeah, exactly that.
This is my view. So we are approached by lenders daily. Okay, people know who we are now. And one of the things they sit down and say to us is, because Synergy, we lend our own money, right? So we understand, I have to understand what we're doing, because effectively before we got any wholesale funding, it was my money that we were lending, and we still do. And, what they're finding, so a lot of foreign exchange companies have said, oh, we want to start referring clients to you.
Yeah.
And the lenders seem to be a little bit more switched on than what the typical white label provider is. They see straight away when a smash and grab's coming.
Yeah.
So what they've done is they said, okay, you can refer these clients. You might have the opportunity to mark that rate up. And then they find out that the foreign exchange brokers put a 6% facility fee on the front end.
Yeah.
And that's a reputational risk to the lending market, okay? So lenders now, I'm finding lenders are a lot more picky about who they work with than what the typical white label provider
You can't blame them. Look at the car industry as an example. All the extra commissions they charged on all the finance packages.
Yeah.
They're now going to have to put billions aside to repay that to everyone, and finance is scrutinized. So, what is okay today might not be okay tomorrow in finance. And I think that's what is a bit different with payments. Like regulation does move along, but you typically kind of know about it well in advance. Whereas in lending, high courts might make judgments that then affect your business. So they need to have their backs covered with these products. They can't have loose ends or businesses that don't tick every compliance box that they need, because one day they might have to set aside millions of pounds to refund their customers.
Yeah. It's one of those. It's like, we love what we do, we know what we're doing, but it is sometimes you sit back and someone will send to me, oh, look at this website, blah blah blah. I don't even know who the company is, but you can see who they're getting their line from. It's like Trade Finance Solutions. It's like, it's like trying to sell foreign. It's like trying to deal with a client on a €500,000 trade, a forward trade.
Yeah.
On your second day in the business, like you're going to lose more business than you're going to get by trying to sell a product you just don't understand.
Yeah.
And so I don't see that as a problem for me, because it's like, well, lenders are going to see through that, and I'm like, I don't really particularly want this person to represent anything to do with us. But for yourself, when you're speaking to some of your clients, the people you work with who've got trade finance, do they know what they're talking about?
More often than not, they are referring to trade finance, I would say. It's normally FX experts that are working with trade finance products. I don't necessarily think everyone has been correctly trained in the product service and how to kind of deliver it, but it's been more. But I think it's new for a lot of firms, right? I think a lot of them are in their first year or second year of obviously dealing with financial products and services of this nature. So I think there is an element where they are training the teams, but these are new products to the business, so they're finding their path to market, I suppose. At the moment, I think they're using it more referral than they are sort of go-to market, if that makes sense. So maybe that will shift. Maybe we'll start seeing more of their sales teams focus on lending.
This is the thing. So I think it's good for the market.
Yeah.
We won't say any names, but there was a company that was specialising in being that referring agent for smaller FX companies, etc.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a good model. But what I saw the risk in that is like, when you're dealing with foreign exchange brokers here, they're gonna want to go direct to their lenders eventually.
Yeah.
I don't know whether that happens or not, but then I've noticed a particular company, they now got a foreign exchange line as well. So isn't that a bit of a conflict? Like, you're taking referrals in from foreign exchange companies supposed to be your partners and you're working with, and now you're a foreign exchange company as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, you said it, right? Like, yeah, it is a conflict, and there's plenty of conflicts in industry. These are some of the things that I think regulators look at very regularly. I know AFEP obviously do a great job looking at the regulations of the industry and sort of helping advise that along.
Okay, so Mitch, we're talking about a wide range of topics.
Yeah.
We could talk about this forever,
to
be honest. But in your perspective, what are the best FX payments companies doing, and what are they investing in today, would you say? What's keeping them ahead?
Well, look, it's like I said, I think earlier on in our discussion, we mentioned that those firms that are kind of getting multi-products on and supporting their sales staff to go to market. I think if you're giving just basic, FX spot forward and that's it, you are putting them at a disadvantage of what they can and can't sell against and talk to. So we're seeing a lot of movement with cryptocurrencies right now being used as like a more non-traditional payment rail. So using them in emerging markets and where risk is higher to take payments out and deliver payments for faster than your more traditional payment rails. We're seeing a lot of businesses focus on, more of the offering hedging and options and, structured products that are going to help sort of tailor and build exactly what that customer wants to achieve. I don't think it's about price in the upcoming year. I think it's about speed and delivery for everything.
That's all been done, isn't it? It's selling on price. It's
gone now. It's going to be about a platform. It's going to be about the speed of delivery. It's going to be about, the flow of compliance, customer service, prompting your customers when required, being on it in that respect, being organized. Those are the brands that are going to be more successful this year. If you are focused on price and only price, which a lot of the firms still are, one, you're not making profit, and two, it's a race to the bottom.
When attracting talent, so you get a spec from, multiple of the companies you work with, for the candidates you're speaking to, how important is online presence and branding to the average candidate these days?
I can only talk about my own experience. I've never picked up the phone and cold called since I set up my business. Everything I do, is through online medium and, getting customers to come to me, getting candidates to come to me, through advertising, through just delivering honest and consistent messaging. So I still believe very much in cold calling, but only if it is supported and only if it's, driven by the right manager.
Yeah. Are you finding that something that's increasing now? Firms are starting they're trying to do more now, or is there some people still stuck in the mud? No.
50-50. I think there's always going to be guys that this is the way we've done it for years and this is how we're going to continue to do it. How can you change someone's opinion when they've got proof in the pudding, right? So I understand, they're not going to make changes to their sales processes. Other firms obviously are, making those changes and seeing the reactions and the performance numbers and what it can do for a brand and for their sales, So I think more and more businesses are seeing that from their competition. And obviously, more and more picking up in, the more unique areas. It doesn't need to be social media or video, I think it just needs to be, outside the box and in support of your sales delivery and your messages.
Is it still a space where people come in hungry and are you seeing the same sort of hungry candidates as you did when you were at your firm?
The candidates still exist. I just don't think employers are selecting that anymore. They want upper educated, well-spoken Queen's English.
That would have been that would have been us out in the
first exactly. Back in the day, it was you wanted the cheeky chappy, the guy who had the chat, the guy that could talk to anyone for days, and that was very much me back in the day. Yeah, which is why I say I'm a bit of a dinosaur now, because I can see the movement in the market. I'm definitely not as educated as other sales individuals in the marketplace. So, I'm probably one of those guys that still looks behind the scenes and says, do you know what, this is the way I do it. And, but that's actually, that thought and setting up my business is what forced me into doing things a little bit differently and kind of getting the proof I needed that, using the technologies, AI tools and, other things around you is only going to bolster and boost your sales. Not that I want to promote AI because I actually think that's going to be the downfall of everything, but, that's another story for another day.
Yeah, well, you either what is it they say, you either move with the times or the times move you, that sort of thing, right? Yeah. I mean, you work with a wide range of companies and, these podcasts, this isn't a sales pitch for Synergy at all, it's just a conversation. But, I'm always going to ask it. I mean, you've been working with us for 7 years?
Yeah, 6 or 7 years.
7 years. Yeah. How have you seen us change? And where do you see Synergy? You always say to me that you're always the first one to say, Terry, I'm loving what you're doing right now. This, that, and the other. I mean, how do you see us? We differ these days.
Well, because I remember first meeting, and we were actually had this kind of back and forth questioning about like where do you see the industry? Not on camera, but I actually do vividly remember this, and. I think I mentioned to you at the time, because that's when I was doing the videos and I had the likes like Paul Plewman come in and a few other guys from industry And I think you'd seen those videos. That's actually what I think had maybe, caught your attention to work with us at the time, or something on those lines. But I remember you going through a sort of set of questions like, what
actually back on Paul Plumett,
and I mentioned
probably one of the best market commentaries you're going to get on.
Exactly. I mean, look at him. He's a perfect example of like, he brings an almost community to the industry.
Yeah.
He's getting competition or competitors working together or communicating together. And I think that's so important in the industry. There's so much networking that's done off the back of what Paul's done in industry.
Yeah, it's actually quite helpful with us because we've got the FX desk. He come out, reached out to me.
Yeah,
and he said, a couple of, because he's been doing that for a while, and he's very polished. He's got, he's got his own.
He's a great coach. Like, he really does mentor a lot of people.
He's got his own little thing, the way he does stuff, and it was quite a constructive way of working with a competitor, really.
Yeah, but like, seeing what you've done with Synergy, you were at the time a box standard FX payment firm. You were utilising white label relationships. You probably at the time were on a bit more price and finding your journey and feet as a brand. But I think where I've seen Synergy different to other brands is that you have adapted year on year. You've kind of come at it with a different strategy and an approach to try new things, new products. And that's rare in a brand of your size, I would say. Most firms are just so focused on profit and only profit that they don't want to bring in new products, don't want to bring in new team members and try new ideas. And I think that's what's gonna, really seal the deal for any brand moving forwards, in the sense of growth, because as long as you're adapting.
We always had that. We always had the lending side. I mean, with Thundercats, we're doing it more through Synergy Exchange now. But we were lending our own money. We were doing lending for quite a while. But you can have the products and you can have the best product and wrapping it together. But you've got to get it out there. And it's, the way we were doing it, we had really, really good cold callers, like strong desk.
Yeah.
But it was like, this isn't the way anymore.
Yeah.
This isn't the way anymore. And we still do. Obviously, we are phone based. We do talk to clients, but I've always been quite brave when it comes to that. Really, I was like, do you know what? It's, I don't want to be like everyone else.
Well, we used to do assessment days for you. If you remember way back when, and I've not done one of those for a year and a half. So I think the market's moved on from that academy sort of cold call sales approach.
Yeah. So I've got a very good example. I think I reached out to you about recruiter tactics in the market.
Yeah.
Okay. So have you seen some poor and aggressive recruitment tactics in the market recently?
Of course, it's dog eat dog out there. I think there's a lot of BS that I think recruiters may feed the candidates to get them through into jobs, and hope that they're going to get the fee from that, but ultimately ends up in the refund, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So, without talking about names, I was actually going to name and shame this person.
No.
I was actually not on this podcast. Not on this podcast, but I was actually.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. So, obviously, listen, most of our team. Obviously, some of our team do work from home or operational staff. But we're a very tight knit team here. Right, nothing comes through without me finding out about it.
Yeah.
Because we're all friends here as well. Do you know what the atmosphere is like here? And we had a particular recruiter, bedroom broker, 100% I'm bedroom broker.
Yeah.
And sent a very, very detailed rundown of my business. Apparently, we've got regulatory issues. There's rumours of redundancy as well. And a load of other things. And it's like, seemed to know more about my business than I did. I'd have to ring my accountant up to find out, where was some of this information. So I called him out on it. And it was like, you might have found that bullish or anything like that. I find it's outright lying and fear-mongering, and actually gives recruiters a bad name.
Well, look, if you don't use their service, I think that's what some recruiters unfortunately do. They kind of, if you're not working with us, you're working against us kind of mentality, which is just broken, like ultimately the industry is the industry and not everyone's going to use you. You've got to establish your partnerships and go out there and work them as best you can. Whereas there are some recruiters out there, maybe they're in a job rather than business owners, or I don't really know what the driver is, but their focus is just on making placements, and they don't care whether the job's right for you, whether it's right for the client itself or the employer itself. They just want their fee and they want to get in and get out. It's created a bad brand for my industry, recruitment in general. It's something that we've always got to overcome. We are treated like a recruiter by a lot of firms. I'd rather refer to ourselves as headhunters. We don't advertise. We don't use job boards. We're not just following up, chasing people. If anything, I will not chase a candidate or a client. If it's not important to you, it's not important to me. That's my kind of attitude when it comes to recruitment.
At the end of the day, employers don't like it when people try and post their stuff, right?
Yeah.
We don't like it because we put the training in, and it's very much, I don't look at you like that because you're my mate, and definitely yourself,
Well, we like to try to avoid it as well, to be fair.
But, it's very much one of those things where I pick who I work with. And and you were definitely one of those people I thought, well, I'd rather him in the bucket pissing out than out pissing, right? Yeah. So, but do you do things a little bit differently? You don't fire into people's
I used to. I'm not going to sit here and pretend otherwise. I used to just fire out messages all day long. That would be what my full-time job would be. I think I've grown a network now of 30,000, so this isn't for everyone, obviously, but now it's all about posting videos, messages. People come to us, we'll create intrigue out there, through our content and through, the businesses that we're working with, and then through conversation tend to identify, the right individual, and with bit networking and referrals. I've got a lot of friends in FX over 20 years that, really do sort of, when people become available, kind of make me aware of that, let me know of that, so we can reach out and generally have that conversation. So most of the time we're speaking to candidates that aren't necessarily strictly looking, but they're unhappy about something, and that's why they've come to us. They've seen something that they've related to in our post, a frustration that we might have let them feel.
Your posts definitely do that. So, I mean, you're definitely past that stage from where you have to be doing those sort of tactics anyway. But your content is quite appealing like that to people that are like, do you know what? I'm sitting here. My line manager, all he cares about is how many calls I make, what my call time has been.
Yeah.
Is there more to this? Is there more to this interesting that? And we know there is, but some people they only know that one firm that they've been working for. And what you post definitely would prick the ears of people like that. And actually,
I mean, my peers in recruitment, I think, hate me, if we're being honest. I take abuse from everybody because I keep my fees low and I out, some of the poor practices. I saw your post on that, actually, yeah. I took a bit of stick from that one. But, that's truth hurts, you've got to be honest and upfront. And, we do overcharge. I think that there are some recruiters out there that use some very expensive tools and you're paying for it, when you could be working with a supplier that's actually, found their niche, worked in it for, 20 years and knows everyone and every player in the market.
That's the thing with you, Mitch, though. I don't talk to other recruiters through in-house recruitment. I am from that, I'm loyal to who I work with, and no matter what we would have, there are other people that have candidates, but we'll always go to you first, which is people don't have that sort of loyalty anymore.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's like, I know you've worked in this industry. I don't want someone recruiting for me in-house that's saying, I know this, I know that. I know you do. You were a sales manager before you were doing this. You know the role. Some of the other recruiters that reach out to us, I know they haven't worked in the industry. And if they have, they certainly haven't worked into you. So there must be frustrating on your side. Look,
I know full well there's 100 brokers out there that I've trained firsthand, and spent 2 or 3 years working with them.
Me too.
And I come across a lot of them in the industry. It's one reason I have a business, because a lot of these guys went on to become heads of desks and things like that. So, it is frustrating because, you get treated as a recruiter and, you kind of see yourself more as a kind of FX advisor, within industry. You're not just sort of going in, bringing candidates in. You're explaining the plans, the futures, and trying to align everything for them. And it's not just about what salary do you want and what do you want in your next role kind of thing. It's actually our ambitions aligning here. Is this person going to be the right level to take that team forwards, or ask those questions? And you only really get that through being on the job, going through the hard days, you definitely go home frustrated more than you go home, patting yourself on the back for a job well done. So, I think it's important to understand that.
So what would your main advice be for candidates that might have been somewhere there for a year? They're at a place where they might not see the progression there, or they might be, I'm not really getting some of the support that.
My true advice, if I'm your manager and I'm sat in front of you, toughen up. The industry's not easy. Making 6 figures isn't easy. No one sits in front of you and says this is the guaranteed way to do it. It takes 2 or 3 years to build. You're going to go through more rejection. You're going to go through more hell than any other career that I could possibly think of. And I've done a fair few careers in my time. In reality, you just have to toughen up. You have to persevere. There's nothing else said about the matter. There is a lot of challenge along the way. There's a lot of rejection along the way. People are going to go home upset from time to time because deals didn't go the way you wanted them to go. Your manager spoke to you badly because he's taking a bit of pressure as well. These things happen in an office. We're all humans. But everyone's so sensitive nowadays that they run away at the first hurdle, or they're, having a bad day and they just didn't feel like this is what they're going to be doing in their future. And it's just such a weak mentality today. I know I shouldn't say that, but that's the reality of today's employment market.
Okay, so this person now is 2 years in, just over 2 years in. They're doing the numbers. They've been gritty, but they don't see like, is this company right for me? Because it's very focused on one-dimensional sales.
2 years in, you've got to really ask yourself, like, is it the performance you're putting in? Are you really doing it? Have you had appropriate training? Are you coming up short in your script? Like, where is it going wrong? Because that really determines whether you're with the right brand or whether you're not. And that's one of the conversations I would likely have with someone at that stage in their career is, sometimes a move isn't the right thing. Actually, sometimes it is about staying with the present employer, if that's what it means is best for your career. But other times, it is that you're working for this firm that is expecting you to do the 200 dials with no real support and literally is just smash and grab and see what happens. And at the end of the 3 months, well, you're down on KPIs, you haven't booked enough meetings, and if that's happening every quarter, it's highly likely you're not being supported correctly. If you're not being put on pips and actually having your manager push you through, success is not comfortable at any stage or any level.
I mean, so like the type of candidate that that does well in this industry, I've seen is dramatically changed.
Yeah.
You do need to have a little bit more about, you need to be able to take on knowledge of products and actually deliver that. It's not just I'm good at picking up the phone and I'm good at getting people to fill a reg form out.
Yeah.
Those people don't necessarily succeed in, because I've seen the best people actually experienced it. The best person that's ever worked for me that can get a client registered would have been like not going to make it as a dealer.
Yeah.
But you
contradicting talents, knocking down doors and keeping them open are two different skill sets.
Yeah.
I think that's not always thought of because you're just told you can become a dealer.
Yeah, and that was like the shrine to be.
Yeah.
That is where people perceive make the most amount of money. But I don't know. Like nowadays, certainly, the way we're structured here, if you're on business development, you can earn way more money than if you're dealing.
100%. Yeah, sales is aggressive. Sales is there. You are being rewarded because it's hard work, because it is. There's such a small percentage. You're really converting 2% of your phone calls into something meaningful, right? So you go through a day of failing constantly. You need to be rewarded for that because you only have a certain amount of energy to give. If you work 5 years in new business sales and you don't achieve out of that, you will find your energy very quickly passing you. Hence why I don't do sales anymore. I'm in recruitment.
Well, I think if we're to look at these older models of you have to make 200 calls a day, you've got a shelf life doing that. Right?
Stress is going to get to you. Repetitiveness is going to get to you. It does to anyone the toughest. Mentalities can get you a certain distance in it.
Yeah.
But at some point, you need to find the map to success during that time.
So in your opinion now, like obviously you're working with every different sort of FX payment partners there is, you're the best person to really say if people are looking into getting into this industry sector, what are the key attributes a person needs today to be successful in this space?
So you've got to be naturally confident. You're going to be on the phones after week one. There's no two ways about it. So, you've got to be able to string a sentence together. Number one kind of skill set, which no one really discusses because it sounds so simple. You've got to know your markets, your economic calendars. You've got to understand what is actually driving currency and foreign exchange. There's so much volatility today. There's so many more things now than there was when I started, when Trump can just literally put a tweet out there and change entire, markets and economies. That was never really a present risk back in the day. So, I think you've got to be very adaptive with what we're seeing, the volatility that we're seeing. I think you really need to focus on profit angles and where you're going to make that, because everyone's calling blind, when actually if you go after the niche, the wacky and the wild and the businesses that aren't being as approached as quite often as other businesses are, you're going to get, better results from your phone call and from your efforts. And it's all about, in sales, during those 2 years that you mentioned with that example earlier, it's all about, building yourself step by step, month by month, up piece by piece until you are the finished article. If you are not feeling that you've met that direction after 2 years, then you do need to start considering your next move.
Okay. So generally, when we wrap up, we do a little quick fire question.
Go on.
Okay, so as a roundup, in a broker, okay, what's the best trait a broker could have?
Honesty.
What's the worst trait they can have?
Can I say dishonesty? No, I'm joking. Worst trait a broker can have, fast communication.
Okay. What's the most overrated skill set you see?
It's going to sound bad, but everything you learn from school, science, maths,
Interesting.
English, how much of that are you actually using? Are you using any of what you've learned at university or school in your day-to-day life, or are you putting it all together yourself?
That's true. Most underrated skill?
The way you can communicate in FX, you've got to be clear and concise. You've got to make sure your customer understands exactly, the product, the service, and what they're about to use or sign up for.
Okay. Cold calling or brand-led approach?
Brand-led approach. I think cold calling is still very much relevant, but near impossible without any brand approach there.
Okay. If you could change one thing about this industry, what would it be?
Make me the number one recruiter in the industry? No. That's a hard question. What would I change in the industry? I would get everyone into the same view in his mind. You don't need to sell your jobs. You don't need to sell the dreams to get people through the door. Like, if you lay out the hurdles and challenges in front of people, people are more equipped and better to jump over them, and I think that's important message to all firms that are, maybe misaligning their onboarding and hiring through, making certain promises on targets and, making it appear or appeal more than it actually is to gain your interest. The career's already interesting. You don't need to do that. I've done this for 20 years and I've never had to sell a job.
With you. Well, Mitch, listen, really appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
You've been a value partner of us for quite some time now. We're going to drop the link to you below to Fintech Rec. I would always say, and it's not just because you're here, you'd be the first point of call for us for anything in industry related. If someone's not working with you at the moment, definitely give you a try. You go above and beyond, and you're fair. And I really appreciate working with you, and thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much. I'll give you that 50 quid later.
That's